hands in a lot of different areas. But yes, there's a yoga collective called the Crystalline Collective in McKinleyville. Yeah,
Do you like doing that?
I love it. Yeah. Currently, my only offering there is teaching children's ballet class, and it's an intuitive ballet class. So it's about children getting into their bodies and listening to their own awareness. What I've noticed about working with kids, well, like the whole general like passion about working with kids has a lot to do with authoritarian figures and then just being a good friend and a safe environment facilitator for children.
Authoritarian figures in that's what they're dealing with usually?
Yeah, usually I think a lot of us have dealt with parental figures. I mean, we have society, people telling us what to do, how to do it, who to be, questions like that, or self-imposed ideals,
The self-imposed
notions.
one is huge, right? Especially as
Huge.
you're a kid and you're growing up and you're trying to figure out, "What do I actually think about this? Where do I stand?"
Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah.
So, kids ballet classes, yoga. I teach yoga. I used to. I've actually taken a good break from that. I got certified in probably the year after we graduated. That was transformational.
To be certified in yoga.
Yeah.
What
Yeah.
does that entail?
For me, oh my God, it was a purgative experience. Like literally other people around me were like throwing up on their mats and like crying and screaming over there from one corner and then over here we've got this scenario going on. But I mean that was my experience. It was really beautiful. I myself also was in that state of like blah. Really it was movement of the body. The body will hold memory and the memory of this lifetime and also like hereditary lives before us, which is in yoga, it's called the runa bandha or in Sanskrit, which is the memory of the body. So you may think about like muscle memory or like working out, you'll get used to it. Well, it's also like that in terms of longer sustaining habits. And so when we look into that, and during this yoga teacher training, it was like fully like diving in cleaning and purging everything that was like old to bring in new habits and parts that actually serve the body and the spirit.
And so people are actively throwing up while going through that? And
Oh
is that
yeah.
just because of the movements? Is that because of the stress of what they're trying to do? Walk me through
Oh my
that.
gosh. Yes, both. I mean, probably everything you can probably imagine. Yes. Well, yeah. Um
I mean, what do you have to do to be certified in yoga? Is it just hit certain poses?
it's really like for me I was trained in swastika yoga, which is like yoga on the mat and also as a lifestyle off the mat. Um yoga definitely helped refine my being in a way where I was like really finding out like the true essence of what it is to be human and to witness others being utterly vulnerable and human. Um, yeah, so getting the yoga certification was like just a single aspect that was like definitely a whole world of its own. And but yeah, learning poses, learning sequences. I was trained partially in Ayurveda during that time, which is an ancient healthcare in India, and it's still practiced to this day widely in the West also. So it's really applicable to everybody. Um, so yeah, a little bit of everything in this yoga teacher training, and it was a 200-hour yoga teacher training that was all condensed within, I believe, a week,
Wow, that's pretty significant to
a
go from
week and a
200
half.
hours.
Yeah, yeah,
That's
it's
intense.
pretty beautiful. Hmm.
So you you said this idea of becoming human, which I follow you on Facebook, and that's actually kind of how I had the idea of, oh, I want to bring you on. Is I see you post a lot about that, about trying to become human or being more in touch with humanity. What does that mean for you?
For me, it's not becoming anything but undoing the conditions and coming back to source of who we really are. So, this conditioning looks like, I mean, literally in our language too, the way in which we use language, like I am hungry, for example. And other languages don't have this, um, which I would love to learn a new language one day soon. I mean, I'm in practice, but transform that to I am feeling hunger, for example. But the identity involved in that is structured daily. And then if we look at that as kind of a reflection to our own interpersonal relationship to self, are we identifying? We're identifying with so much, and it's not really becoming anything. It's just utterly like remembering the essence that we already are without distraction.
Almost like you're stripping away
Yeah.
those outer barriers. Okay. What was yoga kind of the start of that for you? Is that what made you realize you wanted to start doing that, or was it just a gradual slip into that mindset?
It's been a gradual path of awakening throughout my entire life. And I would definitely credit that to trauma, like intense trauma and like initiation, I'd say. Which we don't have a lot of in this like Western culture, in this society,
Of trauma?
or acts of, let's say, more of like a rites of passage. I mean, we don't really have that in this society. I mean, we have graduation, we have birthday celebrations and things of that sort, but we don't really have that rite of passage for many of us to initiate into. But I feel like I've gotten in touch with that through many traumatic experiences, let's say, that brought on an early maturity that people bring out and say, like, Claire, you're only 24 years old. What the fuck? What? And it really, I just credit to a lot of interpersonal work and like, yeah. So starting at a really young age, I had like a really traumatic childhood or was really impoverished and um bringing into question like man, what really matters in this world? And a lot of people like come to the source of like, man, what's my purpose in this world, or what am I supposed to do, what should I do? And all those questions kind of cover up like what it is to actually be. And the deep presence, or what we hear as like presence, is really the gift of the now.
Well, it's easy when you go through something traumatic to kind of shut the world out, or even more so, get angry with the world, and then you start lashing out and you attack people, and then you're just this hurt person hurting other people. That seems to be the situation that carries down.
Yeah, hurt people hurting other people, like we see that in our youth. Bullies, if people are treating that child in that way, they will maybe can't continue carrying that out. Let's say it's a parent or a guardian, and we can look at that as like hereditary trauma and think about how those parents were treated to then enforce that upon their children. It's very common.
Too common.
Yeah, too common. It becomes normalized.
So
Mhm.
you feel like that trauma kind of reinforced something in you to kind of pave this way to where you are now.
Yeah, it's purely self inquiry, questioning into what's actually normal around me and seeing that it doesn't have to be or should be any other, like it can just be questioned, can be brought into self inquiry before it's adapted into. And yeah, that's how I learned like questioning into that.
The idea of the ceremony is, I don't know if it's pretty popular now or it's always been
Yeah.
popular, but that idea, especially, boys becoming men or women becoming women or girls becoming women, you go through that transformational change, and we don't really have that in Western culture. You just kind of transition. Like you said, you have high school, you graduate, and then you're just this adult, but there's no ritual that you go through to become that. I guess
Yeah.
in Latin culture, you have like a quinceañera for a girl, but
Right.
that's really what else is there?
Yeah, exactly. I believe shamans, for example, go through a period of psychedelic experiences with medicine, for example, but they're held in tribe with blessings and facilitators that have been initiated upon initiation, for example. And I think that's really extreme. Oh my gosh, because I mean, I've had my fair share of psychedelic experiences that were beyond intense, and coming out of it alive, I was like, holy shit, I'm still here. That was initiation of itself. But especially for women on a more gentler level, is like our moon receiving our bodies changing, and usually the hormone balance around 100 pounds for a child or a girl initiates them into a woman typically. In older traditions, there you go, there you're a woman. But I found that for men it's definitely kind of a more challenging thing. I kind of have this grief for the masculine in this society that we have, because there's a lot lacking in support of our masculine and our men, or like it's so important. And I feel like also father figures can set that up really well for us. And we need maybe a couple generations of that, because there's this generational neurosis happening that's affecting us in an unsustainable way that can lead to our our deprivation of like being human and coming together. It further bringing this belief of separation, dualism.
It's weird hearing you say that. Not a lot of people talk about men in that way, that they need that figure. That you hear that in terms of women, like women need this guiding figure, but men, they're just kind of, you're left to the wind.
Hmm. Yeah, and I feel like there's so much grief. Um, there's so much grief around that for me, because I facilitate women's circles and hold ceremony and just get together and have cacao, which is um a like blessed version of like hot chocolate, only it's very intentionally set, and there's a specific ingredient to making it, and there's a blessing that's involved, and the which and where I source it is really important too. So anyways, cacao ceremonies, women's circles, but like as women rise, it's important to encourage the masculine to rise as well. And yeah, it's well
Do you feel like
seen.
that's not being done in society now?
Mm-mm. I mean, for women, yes, there's a lot of suppression on both sides, but in the field, as a student learning all of this and seeing what's happening, yeah, everybody needs to be supported this way, regardless of identity as well or gender. Yeah.
Why do you feel like that suppression is in place? You think that's just
Yeah.
cultural? Do you think that's just what we've built up in society?
Yeah. I feel like there's a lot of, man, I mean, who fucking knows,
I know that's a
man?
loaded question, right?
It's like so infinite. Yeah, it's happening. That's what matters. It's happening now, or at least I see that that's happening, or I feel that that's happening in my experience. And to me, that's what matters. And what's really important is in which we respond, from either reenactment of the past or reactivity or responsibility. And so there's always a choice, and either we can react from the past and continue this pattern, or you know, be integral with our being and question and inquire and be curious about it. That involves change.
Did psychedelics help at all with that
Oh,
realization?
probably.
Yeah. I mean, right? Those two seem to go hand in hand.
Yeah. I feel like all of this sounds psychedelic. I'm just like, wow, it's very energizing to speak on, because, yeah, uh, in terms of like my path, I feel my dharma has a lot to do with helping people and service people in a way where they can inquire. And that's interpersonal healing.
Your dharma?
Yeah,
I don't
or
know what
like
that is.
dharma is like your path. It's your like meaningful like
Like your calling in
purpose.
life.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, your service to the world or yourself.
And you feel like your service is kind of tied to psychedelics?
um I mean, life psychedelic, man. I've never been more high rather than like being sober completely. I've never been more high than when I'm sober. So
We
life
got to get you on some
psychedelic.
different drugs. I mean,
I mean,
no, but I get what you're saying. That
huh.
high on life sentiment.
Yeah. I mean, it's all here in the present moment. Like, dude, I've been crippled by breathwork ceremonies and situations where it's just breathing. You get this thing called tetany. And I've been training in these things called rebirthing sessions, and they're incredible. Um,
I don't know what that is. A rebirthing session?
yeah, so it's a breathwork technique that's of cyclical breathing. And you just kind of lay down with your knees slightly elevated and a pillow under your head, and you're brought on with like many blankets, and you're really cozy. And this is just to begin. Like other people do this stuff in ice baths or in extreme heat temperatures and things like that. So I'm just a beginner. And like there's this thing called tetany, which is slight paralysis of your body simply by breathing. I've been told that this alkalizes your blood to be breathing in a way that oxygenates your body so much with just breathing. And crazy, like you just receive crazy visuals, and like your body will act in certain ways that it's involuntary. It's really incredible. I recommend it to everybody.
I've heard about that breath work, you can reach this almost psychedelic state. Do you
Yeah.
know who Wim Hof is?
Of
The
course,
breathwork
yes.
guy? Yeah, I
Yeah.
gotta dig into him because he seems fascinating, but have you reached that state doing the breath work?
Oh, yeah.
You have. Is it
Yeah.
I've heard it's hard. Is it you have to dedicate time to trying to get there?
Mm. Trying to get anywhere is questionable. As long as there's like devotion to just giving it a shot, like see what happens. Be curious. Like there's no guarantees. But yeah, for sure. I have experienced some incredible psychedelic experiences just by breathing, just by being alive. And yes, many other psychedelic experiences with substances or medicines that are like ancient and used in tribes. Like it's a blessing that we have access to those kind of things here. But yeah.
I mean, it's crazy that they're not legal. I think shrooms, the big push is shrooms right now. I know they decriminalized them in Arcata. There's a push to do it in Eureka. I
Mhm.
think Colorado as a whole just decriminalized them. Colorado, Oregon, Washington. You're not on the mic, Andy. Colorado, Oregon, Washington. That's what should happen. I mean, the idea that these plants are criminalized and yet they've been used. I mean, just in conjunction with our rise in humanity is kind of interesting.
Yeah. Yeah, it is interesting. Using, like pretty much one good trip is good enough for a lifetime. And at least that was my experience, even though I've continued to dabble with it when I had some new things arise into my life where I'm like, okay, I'm ready to purge now, or accidental dosages and things like that that were completely safe, completely safe. Um, but questionable if I'll ever do that again. I don't think so.
Accidental dosage meaning somebody kind of helped you get into that state, or
um, so
because that's pretty ambiguous. Accidental dosages.
Well, it's hard dosing medicine for
Oh, so
yourself,
you
let's
just
say.
accidentally
Mm,
dosed it.
yeah,
Okay, I heard
yeah.
that and went, "Oh, did somebody spike your food or something?"
No,
Okay.
thank goodness, no. Safely at home, you know, reliable sources, safe, beautiful, authentic sources, trustworthy sources. Yeah. But liquid doses can be pretty intense when it comes to acid. It's really
Is
hard
that
to dose.
is that your go-to is acid?
It's I don't have a go-to, but let's just say like my most recent my most recent experiences with psychedelics was liquid acid and used in water was what I was told. And it was just supposed to be a microdose, man, but it was not. That thing blasted. It was blasted. Just yeah.
Yeah. That reminds me of the dosing with edibles, right? You
Yeah.
might eat a brownie and it's fine, and then you eat a cookie and then you're gone. Yeah,
And that's the shit I learned in high school,
yeah,
like pretty
right?
quickly and
Yeah.
here in Humboldt.
Yeah, that's almost a staple in Humboldt as you go through that crucible of, "Oh, this was too much. I should not have I should not have gone down this road."
Yeah.
I think that's important in that you can go through that and then you come out and realize, "Okay, I'm still okay. Like, I
Yeah.
made it through. I'm on the other side." It's the people that don't make it through that you get a little worried for. You're like, "Oh, shit," because it
Yeah.
happens. Have you ever done ketamine?
Not yet. No.
I had Carrie Griffin on a couple days ago, and she runs that Center for New Growth. She's doing those ketamine treatments for people, and she said they found incredible results with that of treating people with depression. I think she said alcoholics too.
Mhm.
Um, and they go there, they take the treatment, and it's like their life changes.
Yeah.
That's
Yeah.
the power of psychedelics.
Yeah, and I mean, I would even add that it's not even the power of psychedelics. They're just there to remind us. They're just a part of something that activates already what's inherently here. Um, just to bring it back, like we don't need anything. Just like to self-inquire. This the power of psychedelics can help remind us when we're really deep in a pattern. And Terrence McKenna talks about this with mushrooms, even like microdosing. It really helps us bring fresh powdered snow onto a groove of a mountain when you're skiing, pretty much. It brings on these new neural networks to help us repattern our behavior and the relationship to ourself and or our perception of reality.
Terrence
Yeah.
McKenna.
hmm
Have you read a lot of him?
Not a lot of him, but I mean, I know
Of him.
he's like OG,
Yeah.
spiritualist and psychedelic mentor.
So you are, I would say, well versed, or you're trying to be well versed in that realm.
Oh gosh. No, I'm not
No,
trying any.
but you're just
No.
dabbling.
I have dabbled is my point, yes. And I've learned a lot from dabbling, fucking around and finding out. Yeah.
That can go either way, right? Sometimes that's a good thing, and sometimes you don't wanna find out, and then you do, and it's a painful lesson. I've had a few of
Yeah,
those.
I bet.
Yeah.
Yeah?
Yeah, I mean, you just especially when you're younger and you're more willing to fuck around and find out, you find out
Yeah.
sometimes that that's not the best
Would you call that
approach.
a growing pain?
I would call that growing
Oh,
pain.
yeah.
Subtle plug from Andy, but
And that can be initiatory on its own. Coming out and you find out, wow, I'm okay. I'm still here. I'm alive. Depending on how like intense this was for you. But
have you said that you had a traumatic childhood. Did you
yeah.
have any adverse side effects going through psychedelics with that? Or
Oh
did you
yeah.
feel like that opened you up a little more?
My first psychedelic experience felt as though all of my like being was exploited and I had no control over anything. And it really taught me the art of surrendering and riding the wave and being okay with death, which I ultimately died. I believe that I was like utterly reborn from this purgatory and I was so grateful to like be breathing, but also my entire reality shifted after that. I believe I was only 19. Yeah, I was 19 or 17 years old when I first had
That's a
that.
big change for a 17-year-old
I think so.
to
And
have that reality shift.
yeah, yeah, it was a big shift. And trauma, like, can do that. It can, it's actually something a lot of people talk about as though it's done to us, which for, like, it makes sense. But as someone who's done a lot of this work, it's something that is medicine. It's for us. Psychedelics can sometimes bring that in a way where it's like, this is this is what you've been holding this whole time. Do you see this? And like now it's time to like let that go or bring gratitude and like integrate this. Let's integrate this. And the medicine can be like in many tribal settings, they view medicine as an entity or ayahuasca as a mother, like spirit. And it's really beautiful the way that those encounters can be brought on in a tea ceremony. Oh, I'm not ready for that kind of thing, that's for sure.
The ayahuasca? Yeah,
Yeah.
that one sounds intense.
It's really intense, I've heard, and it kind of brings up this impact of fear that's like any way that there's fear or aversion or like an attachment to ego that will be tested. And like, whew, one of like, I need to be completely ready to let that go to dive into something like that.
The ego death is the part that I find most fascinating.
Yeah.
That stripping away of oneself in place of something better. Like you're taking away all this bravado that you have, all this self-perception, and you're just throwing that away.
I like that you said something better. What do you mean by that?
What do you mean by what do I mean?
So, like, the term better is kind of imposing that we're not enough unless this experience or like birthing experience happens or this initiation. So then I hear the term better being used because what's the opposite of that? To say that there's something better is to impose that something's lacking. And yeah,
You don't
it's,
see that. You think that it's just you and you're not creating something better or worse.
you just
You
are.
just are.
Yeah. Which then that, because like, man, there's a whole spiral that can go on from situations like that self limiting belief that you need to do something to become other, better, um, whatever. And that can simply draw us further away from the truth. At least in my experience.
Well, a lot of people chase drugs that way,
Oh
right?
yeah.
Because they think they're better on them or they like themselves when they're high. And so you're chasing the dragon.
Yeah.
And you
Exactly.
think, what is that? You keep coming back to this truth. What is that truth for you?
Oh wow. Truth for me is like what's everything that we think we are, everything we think we know. When that's stripped away, what's left? The biggest question for me is just what is this innate isness of the now? And a lot of ascended masters just like find themselves in like the ones that I've studied to Tibetan Buddhist monks, for example. It's like going all these places and doing these studies for like they've been doing these studies for hundreds of years, hundreds of thousands of years just to come back to like you didn't need to do anything at all, just to come home to yourself. And that tends to be what truth means to me, coming home to oneself before anything.
Do you think that so what okay, I'm trying to unpack
Totally.
that, yeah,
This
right?
stuff gets really
It
esoteric,
does, and I'm trying to
ascension
like, okay, let
thoughts.
me wrap my brain around how that works out. So what about the argument that people that you should always be trying to improve, that you should be working on yourself, trying to become better? Do you think that is inherently in you and you're almost just like chipping away at the marble to try to get to that? Or is that something you have to work towards?
Yeah, I mean, easefulness can be more impactful than work or like trying to get somewhere or let's see, like get approval for anything. And sometimes, like, the most influential people never ask for anyone's permission. They just deeply listen to themselves and they didn't give a And that's really potent for me because that's the most authentic self. Like, those are one of a kind people. And that's after the conditioning of like, none of this shit's true. I really liked what my friend had mentioned. His name is Yeshe. And he had mentioned, we're all in a dream using the dream to awaken, almost as though I mean, that in itself was really powerful for me. Seeing that this reality isn't actually real and we're just living in a dream, but we can use this dream as a tool for our awakening. Um, yeah,
Use this as a tool for our awakening.
yeah, using the dream we're in as our awakening. Yeah. And
And
so then, therefore, nobody else is like, all of us are just reflections for each other. There's no one to approve, there's no hierarchy or authority. We're all just one. And then the dualism and separations dissolve, and we're all just there for each other.
do you think that's the only way we can get there is to dissolve that aspect of searching for approval?
To get where
To
is the
get
question.
oh, that's a good point. Approval is an important thing for a lot of people. A lot of people live their life for somebody's approval. The craziest thing is living your life
Yeah.
for somebody's approval that you don't even know. You have this built up perception in your head of, "Oh, I need to look like this. I need to do this thing because society as a whole will judge me if I'm not." Do you feel like you succeeded at stripping that away? Do you still challenge that?
Oh, I still challenge that to this day. It's not going to go away. Those sensations of innate, like, human experiences to, like, be accepted. We're a social species. We're not meant to, like, be on our own, or all these beliefs and, like, yeah, I I challenge that. Like, it's probably a challenge on the daily. It's a subconscious patterning that runs really deep in us all, but it all connects to one source, is what I'm saying. And it's this belief of separateness, really. To have the exception of like others, like why? When you already have everything you need already and you're perfect as you are, right? Or whole as we are. That tends to be a huge misconception in all of us. And I feel like those kind of questions can bring it back to what do I need from others, really? Or what do I have to give, and how am I cutting myself short of that? And that tends to really come down to like, man, there's infinite different layers of this. It runs so deep. And it's really dire that we do this because we're we're killing our species.
There are a lot of deep sighs coming from you tonight.
Oh, yeah. And also listening to the planet because we need the planet to thrive,
Live.
to
Just
live.
live.
Yeah. But what about thriving, not just surviving? A lot of us feel like that. I mean, growing up really impoverished, I didn't have Wi Fi throughout high school. And that really set me back. And it was so hard to like see children around me with cell phones being able to take photos of their homework that were on like these screens, and I'm like handwriting everything. And I felt really like set back in so many ways. And like, yeah, talk about depth, man. Like, there's no other way for me. There really isn't. And also, only some people are really ready for that. And that really inspires me to like come on and talk on a podcast because one day I'd love to do this.
You should do it.
Oh my gosh.
You should do
Yes.
it.
Yeah. So this is a really beautiful experience that you're hosting and facilitating such an awesome space.
Well, let's not
Or
get too crazy. I mean,
yeah.
we're in a garage, so I mean,
No.
perspective, right?
I mean, I'm like all for it.
But
More of this, please.
that's crazy. I never really knew. I mean, we didn't really know each other super well in high school, but I always knew of you. Like I always knew who Clarice was.
Yeah.
I think we had a couple classes together.
Yeah.
I always knew like you're one of those people I always knew of.
In the yearbook for high school, you got best of eyebrows.
Did I? I did.
Yes.
I did.
I was very proud of you for that.
That's my one achievement. I could die tomorrow and it'd be fine. That's my greatest achievement. That's what I'll be remembered for.
Yeah.
The eyebrows.
The eyebrows.
Yeah.
I got best artist. I got the best
I would
artist.
believe that. You were always
And
drawing.
Aaron was doing that. I think so. Yeah. Rather than doing like, yeah, I was pretty distracted with my homework when it came to a lot of presentations. I was drawing instead.
Well, that's crazy. I didn't know that you didn't have Wi-Fi in high school. That's
Yeah.
would be challenging.
Yeah, it was really challenging. And for graduating in 2016, that was when a lot of like those standards were coming into play. Like I won't unveil teachers' names here, but the requirement I remember like sending in papers by like 12:59, before 1 a.m. or 12 a.m. or something like that, virtually to like send in these papers so that you could like make the deadlines, and I'd like have to come in the day after, so it's already considered late with like a handwritten paper, um just to like complete that, and it just was so challenging. Yeah, no Wi-Fi, like really impoverished. And we mentioned substance abuse earlier. There's a huge amount of that. There's a lot of like, I grew up here. I'm third or fourth generation from Humboldt. I've got a lot of firsthand experiences witnessing overdose and drug abuse, hard drug abuse, nothing even like psychedelics that could have led me down a really different path. But also a lot of those crazy like people out there that have that drug abuse addiction still have a lot of wisdom to share. Um, yeah, it's really sensitive and like important to acknowledge those who are strongly addicted. Yeah.
Well, I'm a believer that advice can come from anywhere. You should always check it with a grain of salt just to make sure that it stands up to snuff,
Totally.
But
Yeah.
I mean, great advice can come from anywhere. It doesn't matter what background the person has or where they are in life. But that's crazy. It's weird that like you can know somebody abstractly and not know what they're going through. Because you go to high school with these kids and you see each other every day. Maybe it's just in passing, but you see them and then you think that's the world, is just what happens in between those bells. And there's
Yeah.
so much other life going on outside of that.
Yeah. Uh that brings in a deep sense of compassion too. Because yeah, regardless of what anyone's going through, we don't know. And to pretend like we do is absurd. It's absurd. Because a lot of us don't even know ourselves. And so if that's ever threatened, then that brings a sense of judgment or again, separation too. Um, yeah. And dude, high school's such a weird playing field. Again, partially traumatic for me. I ended up like testing out college after that. And I felt like this is just really not for me right now. It's just not for me right now. And like a lot of it had to do with what I experienced in high school, but it wasn't even about the school. It was a lot of like my own personal life and then the demands of going to what felt like an institution and then having the authorities demand these like things to be qualified enough to leave pretty much. And it's just not even real. Like it's unreal, which is why I work with children and a lot of the conscious families in Humboldt for this reason. And I got involved taking part in this private school called Nova Terra Alliance, which was a group of 3 women that I got to know personally before they got together to bring their kids into an environment without vaccines or mask mandates, just to simply raise their kids in a loving environment where the children and parents had choice over their own sovereign bodies. I was all for that. Um, More of that, please. Yeah.
Without vaccines? Without the COVID vaccine or just vaccines in general?
Yeah, no standard of living. Like, no fucking standard. All are accepted here. And that's all about what I like to do. And it was really inspired by how I experienced the public school system here in Humboldt, and then how I was also contributing to making that change and taking part in that. Yeah,
Did you feel jaded at all by the public school system growing up because of that?
jaded, like having resentment towards it.
Yeah.
Not anymore. I think none of the teachers really knew better, or maybe they did. I remember one really awesome history teacher that I had at Zane. I believe you did. You go to Zane too?
Yeah.
Yeah, he was so
Is
rad.
it
What's his name? Do you remember? I don't remember.
I wanna
Can
say
we
Paul
say
Bursu, but that was high school. I know who you I think I know who you're talking about. He was a character.
super like wiry hair? He kind of looked like Einstein, but really
You didn't go to
charismatic.
Zane, did you? No. I can't think of his
I
name.
don't want to bring out people's names, but credit to
Do you know
him.
his name?
I don't remember
I
his name.
can't.
But I didn't want to like disclose names or anything or
I
like
can't remember his name.
I
It's
don't
on the
know.
tip of my
Me
tongue.
too. But it wasn't even like the subject. Like I've even had art teachers, and that was my favorite subject, let's say. And I was just like disgusted by class because it was so unenjoyable by the space that the teachers held and their lack of passion towards the subject or like whatever they were having in and like whatever they were going through in their life was then being implemented onto the children. And yeah, anyways, this history teacher changed the game for me. It was no longer about the subject. I just enjoyed being in that classroom because the quality of the experience that I had there mattered over everything. And then I actually got really good grades in that class and like made awesome friends and understood the subject even better simply because of his passion. Yeah.
Yeah, teachers can make or break it. If you have bad teachers teaching a subject, even if you love it, it's not gonna end well. You
Yeah.
have to have a teacher that cares, is passionate about what they do, and sometimes those can be kinda hard to find.
Yeah, it's incredibly rare. It's incredibly rare to meet those who are sincere.
But do you think that's just because most people don't like what they're doing? They just get stuck. They get sucked into that way of life of got a mortgage, I've got kids, I gotta do something to pay the bills.
Yeah, because they're in the state of having to. It's an obligation. It's not an intentional choice anymore. Or maybe it was, and now it's this mundane patterning that they've lost the magic or appreciation for. Um, and I feel like that has a lot to do with choice, like being appreciative of the moment and holding gratitude to be alive and have such influence, especially as a teacher. Um, I don't know if you knew this, but I trained classically in ballet since I was like 4.
I remember that from high school. I remember you being in ballet or you doing something with ballet, yeah.
Yeah, it was pretty intense. So, like, among family challenges at home and the school, I was training like full time classically with ballet, which is incredibly demanding on the body. I mean, I've never pushed myself more than when it came to dance. And I was really seen for that. I was seen as like this talented student and really appreciated by the studios that like gave me lead roles, and I competed and like got into a company. I was offered a contract at 17 years old to move out of the state and dance with this place full time. But like, holy crap, there was a lot to question into that for me, and I ended up deciding not to do that. I felt like I would have been like missing out on truly living, and it would have just became another institution. There's so much competition around that, and I mean, yeah, I could go on, but that was kind of another like training realm for me.
Do you
Like,
regret that decision?
no. I mean, no, not at all. Not at all.
You seem to have this very interesting perspective on life and
I think
trying
I do.
yeah, yeah, I think that's a safe assumption. And just trying to I don't know if you're trying to strip things away or just find the root cause of things, but you have this it seems like you're one of those people that was searching for something and then decided to stop searching, and so now you're in this state of just existing is the best that I feel like I could put that, if that makes sense. And he's looking at me like that doesn't make any sense at all. Does that Do you when you so back going back to high school, did you feel like the things that you are now freed from, that you were searching for, like approval, that authoritarian figure patting you on the back, were those things that you were chasing? Never.
No. I I definitely sense that um like seeking, searching, or trying to achieve anything was what it really comes down to for me. And like that can generally look like any expression: dance, school, approval from authorities or teachers or parents, even. Um, like again, we're like a social species, and I feel it's really important to be there for each other at like our best self, which is actually always current. Every situation we find ourselves in is really the pivotal moment of what is really needed. And yeah, it can really look interesting. But in terms of like searching or the root cause of anything, I'm inspired by true clarity, like and the outlook on life, or like not trying to make anything out of anything other than what it is, what life really is. And that's what we know as it now, or at least what I know of it now, is just true presence.
You're just trying to exist in the moment and each moment as it comes.
Again, there's like the word trying. So
You just are.
we just are. All of us just are. And we're like
Not
reflections
me,
of
I'm
each
trying
other.
constantly. I'm always trying.
Hmm.
You just are.
Yeah. Um, what have you been trying on lately?
I'm trying on this podcast right now. I feel like my life is a constant series of you pushing against the winds of time, and you're trying to move forward, and the winds of time are trying to pull you back. And so you are in this constant struggle of you have to take the next step, and then you will take the next step. There's that Greek mythology, I think it's Atlas, of the stone rolling down the hill, and then he has to push it back up. And I think in a lot of ways that's what humanity is we are pushing the rock back up. And it's not about getting the rock to the top, not about pushing it down to the bottom. It's about what that entails. About you were doing this thing and you were constantly trying to move forward. I don't know if that makes sense. That's the first time I've really thought about that, and I'm trying to work through that as I'm saying it.
That's wonderful. Yeah.
But you
Um,
don't relate to that. You seem like the opposite of
of
Atlas.
course I
You
relate
seem
to
like you
that.
would be sitting on the side like, "What are you doing with the rock? Why are you still why are you pushing
Yeah.
that?"
Why are you working so hard? What are you like, what is there to compensate for when maybe like this is like at most the like this is the most perfect version of you now. And like the belief to, well, of course, there's the motivation and passion to continue on forward because yeah, this is an expression of your heart. And I sense that. But like there's also this importance to see like living can be easeful, and there's a sense of clarity in that for me, which is a lot of what I do talk about when it comes to Facebook or Instagram, because I want to help people remember their inherent self. I want to help in ways support people to beings who are ready to relate to themselves in a new way or cultivate intimacy. Into me, I see is what intimacy breaks down to. And I have had a like a very incredibly like painful experience through that initiation of understanding intimacy with thyself. And trying to get somewhere really involves this belief of time. And yeah, this body is aging, but also like what are we without the body? There's nothing left to identify with. Or if we remove the name, that shit gets scary. That shit's scary as fuck. I've never been more scared in my life as those, other than stripping those things away. The names that are given to us by birth, or even like if we legally change them still. Um, there's so much to say around that. But like, yeah, it can be easeful. Life is easeful. How easeful is it to just breathe? I had asthma attacks when I was a child, and I remember the sensation of not being able to breathe and feeling like I was gonna die. And I've been in the emergency room 3 different times as a child due to this, having low oxygenation and things like that. And later to find out in in India and with yoga, the organ of the lungs results and carries the energetic wavelength of grief. So the lungs literally house grief. And there's practices in which you can like move through that and listen to that. And so in my experience, I've completely healed all of my asthma symptoms, for example, just simply by listening and not trying to treat or fix anything either, or run away from, which I was doing, taking medications and seeing outside help and feeling like something was wrong with me, for example, which exists in a lot of us, believing that something's wrong with us.
Do you feel like you are at peace?
Peace?
Yeah.
Whew. Oh man, that is like completely situational.
It changes for you.
Oh yeah, I'm still like a student in the field. Like I'm just still beginning
You're just starting to climb the mountain.
constantly. As my teacher would put it, the first step is the last step. So like yeah, I'm just so grateful to be here. Oh my God. Like just now in this moment, like there's so many times I feel like I've died and been reborn. To just even be here like speaking on this is like a little like energizing in itself, because peace is like holy shit, I feel like I came out of a war. But also there is like in this chaos there is some organization. There is organization in this chaos. It's synchronized. I feel like we're more powerful than we can imagine, and like yeah, peace is actually omnipresent. It's always here. But what gets in the way of that is the gateway or the invitation to remember back to peace, I'd say.
So what does your ideal state of life look for you? If you
Mm.
could paint a picture of what you would be 5 years from now, where you would be happiest in that moment, what does that look like for you?
I'm still learning to be happy regardless of what's happening. I'm still putting that into practice. And uh, I love permaculture. I'd love to have a garden and a farm one day and just like live off grid with a cob house. Do you guys know what cob houses
I
are?
don't know what a cob house is.
They're
You do
so
wanna pull
freaking
that up?
cool. They're so cool.
It's a cob house?
They're like the most efficient, but also like ancient way of building houses. And they are the most efficient way to build and live in a house or a structure. It's typically like a structure using earthen building. So it's completely biodegradable, but yet they live to be like the oldest structures. There's one on the cliffs of,
That's what that looks like?
yes.
So is it just a clay exterior?
Yeah, so speaking on art and like sculpture building, this is literally living in a sculpture. And you can live in a circular room, which gets us out of this box idea of life and living within literal corners and like sharp edges and things like that.
You don't
So
like
there's
the idea of corners?
no, there's like not the well, there's feng shui.
I was gonna
I
say, is
get
that a
it,
feng
but
shui
like
thing?
living in circles is super feng shui. I recommend this to everybody who feels like they're going crazy in life, like living in a suburban house. Like go live in a cob house on the countryside. I'm sure you'll feel better. And it induces the sensation of being in a cave, so it produces negative ions as though you're being next to a salt lamp or like a Himalayan salt lamp. So it's super good for your mind, super good for your body.
Do you think that's just a nature thing where there are no right angles in nature? Does something to your
Perhaps.
body?
Perhaps, yeah, I think. But it's
Huh.
my dream to definitely
To live
build
in
one
one
of
of
those.
those. To build
And
one.
oh yeah, I want to build one. There's a garden down in Willits. Shout out to Abuela Gardens and Blair. You're super rad. They are currently in the works of building a community on, I believe, 50 acres of permaculture farm, like land, permaculture land. So it's very pristine. There's water, and they already have one beautiful cob structure up and running. It's absolutely gorgeous.
It'd be interesting.
Yeah.
It would be interesting. I do like the idea of living off the grid. That's always been my go-to. Or being self-sufficient. Having a
Yeah.
farm, having animals, growing crops, just being able to self-provide. I do find that angle enticing.
And it's an art.
I think a lot of people want that now, especially with COVID and everything that happened. A lot of people just want to get away from
Dude,
society.
the moment COVID hit, okay, like I didn't go out at all. And so I had this like rental with a pretty decent sized backyard. And I got chickens and I got ducks, which I still have today. Holy shit. And like just stayed home and I tuckered down and I was experiencing fear. I felt like God, everyone's being marketed to as though they're gonna die if they don't wash their hands going to the grocery store or something. It was very extreme. very extreme. So yeah, I started gardening around that time and got even more passionate into researching into permaculture or biodynamic gardening and things like that. Self-sustainability.
Are you a vegetarian? Do you mind if I ask?
I tried it out for 2 years and then I quit. And I've been eating meat. In fact, one of the birds that I raised was a meat turkey. Her name was Sundance, and she was beautiful. I believe she was like the variety was not a heritage breed, so that within the first year of having her, um, it was more humane to actually put her to kill her because their bodies get so enlarged that they live they just don't live in a humane way anymore. Like they have to sit down and rest. And so I had this turkey and I raised her since she was a baby. Turkeys are incredibly hard to raise. I could go into the art of raising birds, but I butchered her. I humanely like killed her, cleaned her, butchered, and then served her for a Friendsgiving on Thanksgiving a year ago.
Oh, that's cool.
Yeah. So I eat meat.
It's probably a good thing.
hmm
Yeah. Do you feel better eating meat?
like physically, I feel the same.
You do.
Um, but I have noticed like after listening to my body, ooh, I don't really rest the best eating gluten, like bowls of pasta and bread and huge sandwiches or something. It just doesn't feel good. I noticed some inflammation from that having it regularly in my diet, so I don't really partake in those kind of things anymore, like gluten or obsessive obsessive amounts of one food or the other, but creating more of a balance in my diet.
Is that what pulled you off being a vegetarian? Was noticing that?
Well, I guess what pulled me out of vegetarianism is there was a study done in a podcast that I listened to that I can't actually credit this to, but fertility rates go down within the next generation of vegetarian or veganism. So there's a study done where um, the fertility rates go down drastically with veganism and vegetarianism and things like that. And by I think the third generation or fourth of that same diet, there's infertility. And I found that to be incredibly scary because I love children and I find having a family one day was really important to me. And I was raised with like eating steak and having really heavy, rich meals. And as long as I could hold that consciously, I felt really called to having meat again in my life. And it's been great. And I've cultivated a much healthier relationship to that than going to the store, separating myself from the relationship of this animal that I'm bringing home and eating. And like really seeing it as though like this is a sacred act and this is like literally fueling my body and um yeah, super important.
Yeah, I mean, how many people have a messed up relationship with food where they just it doesn't work? They're either too compulsive with it where they overeat or they go anorexic and they can't eat. It's that seems pretty prominent. And I wonder how much of that is stress related and what we're going to see from COVID with that of how many people are just either overeating. I mean, you hear the COVID-15 thrown around that people just gained weight from COVID. Have you
What?
not heard?
I
Oh
never
yeah, I've
heard of
heard.
that.
You
I
haven't heard that?
haven't.
Oh, I've talked to a lot of people that are like, yeah, I gained weight through COVID because
I've
you're
heard some
locked down, you're
crazy
just
shit.
eating. Yeah.
But like I haven't met a single person that has had that yet, but
Oh,
you've heard this?
maybe that's just the people I'm. Maybe I should look at
Who
who
are
I'm
you
hanging
hanging out
out.
with?
Yeah, barely people that love to eat food, which me I'm included in that. I mean, I definitely gained weight
There's no.
during COVID.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, but that's because they closed the gyms, and so then I didn't do
Mm.
anything, and I was just eating food, and then I started running, so I lost it. But yeah,
Steak and strawberries. Ugh.
yeah, that's Andy makes fun of me. That's what I was doing for a while was
What?
steak, strawberries. It doesn't sound great, but it tastes pretty good. Steak, strawberries, and olive oil. It was just really, yeah, like, okay. It's not for everybody. It's an acquired taste.
Well, I like steak, but then like adding some like I don't know. Have you heard of keto?
Yeah.
Okay, I was trying that for a little bit. And
What'd you think?
I mean, I didn't find it that different from my diet already. I mean, I eat really high fat, and then I like kind of became more conscious about how much fat I was actually eating because I have incredibly high cholesterol when I got my blood work done last. It was really incredible, uh, but my whole family actually has really high cholesterol. It's really weird.
So what is your diet now?
Yeah. Eggs, of course. I love butter, avocado, and there's a beautiful local bakery that makes gluten-free bread called Arise. Shout out to them. They're amazing. Um, Fresh vegetables and like, yeah, I mean, really just healthy, balanced, whatever I feel like eating. I'm just an intuitive eater without like, I was witnessing myself like giving myself some shame about what I was eating when it came to sweets. Okay, sweets though. Those things are yummy. And I encourage everyone to like nourish themselves with sweets or whatever that they want to eat, but just see like how much of this or how much of that or what balance they're bringing in or really questioning into like, I mean, I even caught myself like, wow, this is a lot of um maple syrup I'm putting in this drink right now, like this cacao drink or, but it's like eating um who does this? Sometimes it doesn't matter exactly what it is we eat. It's how we're eating it or how we're talking to ourselves as we're eating something. And a lot of like these patterns or compulsions around food are a deeper expression from like what we're compensating for or like inner self-talk and dialogue or belief or what we're trying to comfort. Um so I have obesity that runs in my family as well, and so I've put to question a lot of things like that and witnessing that as it is without so much judgment, which I used to when I was young. I was like disgusted by it. I was judgmental and like I was always told I was so skinny, and so it became this topic of conversation. Like I'm like this stick or whatever, and I was like not having it. And I was like, well, this is so weird. All this separation and dualism being created and like this is my blood family. Um, so usually those things run really deep and it's actually okay. Like not continuing that shame or that guilt because that will further impede the cycle of self-sabotaging behavior.
I
um,
think it's interesting. You remind me a lot. I had this girl on, shout out to Lisi. You remind me
Lacey,
a lot of,
yes.
do you know her?
No,
Oh, you
but I like
remind
the
me a
name.
lot of her in that you guys are both very, very chill. Just kind of go with the flow, like just existing, I guess you could say, just
Mm.
existing in a good way. And that is like the antithesis of who I am as a person. Like I am so high strung.
Ah.
I if I sit still for too long, I start spazzing out. I just can't. I can't do it. And that's why I brought up that idea of peace is because I feel like that is something that will be the next great challenge of my life is trying to find that inner peace and not
Mm.
necessarily even peace, just inner stillness. I think that's gonna be my next battle, and it seems I relate to you in that way because it seems like you were just, "Yeah, this is just me. This is just me." And
Yeah.
I've always envied that in other people because
Yeah.
I see that, I'm like, that's not who I am. I can't get there." And it's just that you recognize those things in other people, the things that you want, you always see in someone else, right? And you're like, "Oh,
Mm.
man, that would be cool to have."
Yeah, or there's a greater appreciation. There's something about jealousy I'd like to share, and jealousy or envy is actually a state of familiarity, and um, it can or like yeah, a state of familiarity or something that we see in other people that we're like, wow, I really appreciate that. It's actually a state that's already existing within you, but something's getting in the way of actually truly enjoying that because there's also a fear of receiving what we really want. That's usually what it comes down to is like a deep rooted fear. And fear is the scariest thing about fear is fear, our ideas around it or the beliefs we have around it, the stories attached to what we think or like what inspires fear in our being. Um but yeah, your piece is already there, Nick. It's already there. And there's a lot of distractions around us or and I experience this too. I'm actually very energized and very active and I drink coffee and if I sit for too long and all these things. But talking about these like breathing and breathwork sessions that I've been receiving, which I'll be um approved or like by my teacher, I'll be ready to start holding these sessions with others after maybe 30 sessions. I feel more comfortable with. He's saying by 10, but I mean for me, I want to be doing like some cold ice plunges and that will be like mark 30. So sitting with like all of those aversions in ourselves, all the escapism from our inner peace. And man, distractions are inevitable, but there's a practice in witnessing that happening rather than getting caught by it. And that's usually what really like will continue this pattern of running away from our inner peace, and that's inherent. It's we're born with it. We're born from peace, born as love. We're literally existing love beings and in a body. Or like we're spiritual beings having a human experience. Like there's nothing definable really that can express what we are. And your piece is like it's already inherently there. So um listening to like those activities or what you're wanting to achieve, what you're wanting to do or better yourself are all beautiful expressions of something that is is of self-discipline, and self-discipline is also the greatest act of love that we can um cultivate for ourselves.
Do you feel like a pretty self-disciplined person?
No.
No, not at
I'm
all.
passionate. There's great intention there, but I mean, I don't wake up at 6 a.m. and meditate for an hour yet. I mean, one day. I've got so many busy things on my plate, but I overwhelm myself. There's a compulsion there of its own that's deeply embedded in my family that I see on my dad's side specifically. All coffee drinkers and like active people, and like ADHD runs in my family, very similar traumas, like sparking up that like genetic coding of response. And it's deeply ingrained. So that's kind of the shit I've been working on. Like, but it's possible. It's just it takes really letting go and kind of dying as that version of ourselves and being reborn as something that we already are. Just remembering that inherent peace.
I just got to die first, and then I'm gonna get there. That'll
Yeah.
be that'll be my first step.
Yeah.
I'll die, and then I will be so at peace. It'll be crazy.
And sometimes with that stubbornness, we get so used to that ingrained conditioning that psychedelics do come in handy for things like that, especially like for older or just more conditioned. I wouldn't say age has anything to do with this actually. If anything, our youth has everything to teach for us, but that conditioning runs really deep, really quick, and at very early ages. So not trying to instate that belief of old dog, new tricks, but I want to say that it's always possible and fresh and a clean slate for everybody, regardless, because there's no excuses anymore. It's always inherently now because every breath is a gift to just be. And then there's like nowhere to go. There's just being with yourself, and everything else can be really beautiful on top of that. And just pure acceptance. Yeah.
That's hard for a lot of people to do.
Oh, God.
Just be with themselves. How
Mm-hmm.
many people need that, myself included, sometimes that stimulation of something external that you don't have to sit with yourself and with your thoughts.
Yeah.
That's where we are in life today. I mean, you have your phone 24/7.
Totally.
And how many people are just glued to that thing because if they put it down for 5 seconds, they're gonna hate life or
Yeah.
just feel these emotions they don't wanna feel.
Yeah. Deeply feeling is scary for a lot of people. We're in a culture of numbness and numbing what's actually true, but that's gotten us into a lot of trouble with true discernment and being integral with our being. Um, I remember like, dude, how weird it was. I remember being in the bus at high school. Um, and this taller dude that was like, he should have already been graduated, but he was held back. And he's like growing mustache hair, and I'm a freshman, and like it's super intimidating. But he was harassing this woman in front of me, or like kind of like teasing her, but really too strongly. And I remember like sticking up and standing up for her and telling him to like be in his place. And I was incredibly freaking shy, but something about this just did not feel right. And like being integral in that moment at like I was like 14, a freshman in high school, and I'm like on this bus, and this like freaking seniors like harassing. Who am I to say otherwise or whatever? But I did, and he never forgot that, and he came back to me like maybe when I was a junior, and he's like, do you remember when you did this? And I was like, no. Well, it changed my perspective on life, and I was like, wow, that's so beautiful. And I felt just so like honored because it was the most incredibly uncomfortable thing to feel into my gut of what was actually right, and it was instantaneous. So it's who we are before we think that really matters. And when there's numbness and these habits and stimulation, and so much is sold to us to abandon our true nature, then the world gets messy, relationships get messy, and it's It's really important to come back to that source. That's where change really happens. And yeah, that's really important to look into.
So I gotta ask,
Hmm.
what are your plans with this podcast? Because I think you should start one. I think you can do it.
Thanks.
What do you want to do with it?
Mm. I want to create a platform for people to speak on their inherent nature. I want to speak on topics of struggle and just share truth. This speaking of one's truth is really hard, and it was really hard for me for a long time because I was one of those children that was told to shut up and listen to your parents and like listen to those you're supposed to be obedient to, and taught at a very young age to condition myself to not share what's actually true for me, let alone listen to that or even feel that. So I feel it's really important, especially for a woman as well, to share what's true and what needs to be improved and implement and just get together and share. It's really powerful because coming together, magnetism occurs, and those intentions are astronomically and like affect the entire collective.
Has the Crystalline Collective, did they start their podcast? I know Amelia was talking about doing something similar.
Oh my goodness. Yeah, she's curious to do that too. Yes, she's
Yeah.
wanting to start a podcast. I'm super excited for that. Amelia's another wonderful mother who has absolutely inspired me, and she's phenomenal. I can't wait until she starts one.
Do you so is this something you're hoping to do? Is this something you're pretty set on doing?
I on
Up in the
having a
air on
podcast.
doing the podcast? Because people
Uh,
will say, I want to do a podcast, and then 3 years go by, and it's like, oh, I never started the podcast.
at least at this point, I feel like it's definitely not going to take off. It's just a seed, and I think YouTube is going to really help with that. I'm currently in the works of starting a service business where it's called the Innate Now is the little baby that I've been working on, and a podcast is just like gonna just be there to help support and get that offering out there to those who are listening and inquiring or feeling alone on this journey of inner work, because it's very separating and can be, but it's really on this journey of union and emergence to like um, remembering this wholeness in our being, and like we're all in this journey together, or as what Ram Dass would say, we're all walking each other home. Yeah. So yeah, podcast definitely. I've started one with my teacher Saki. And it's on YouTube, and it's definitely very cringe because it's my first one. So I'm just following the cringe, letting that be my growing pains, and
You just got to work through. I mean, I'm still trying to work through the cringe, so I can relate to that.
yeah,
Do you
yeah.
want to plug what's the name of that one that you're doing with your teacher?
Yeah, the one that I did with my teacher is definitely over an hour or so, maybe an hour and a half long YouTube video with really shitty sound quality. But if you want to hear into some of the lessons that I've been learning and hear it directly from source that I've been studying with for the past 4 years, he is the man. He's an 83-year-old Capricorn sage, is what I would say. It's a very silly sage. And it's on my Clarity channel on YouTube. And it's spelled Clarity with TEA because we're drinking some puer tea.
And you said Clarity Now. That's kind of your brainchild.
Innate,
Innate Now.
innate now.
What is that going to be?
It's going to be the container for facilitation and one-on-one services to work with people and work through traumatic experiences, work through conditioning. Also, I'm working on a program of reparenting thyself, and so it's about coming home to yourself in a way where taking responsibility and being victorious rather than being in victimhood mentality. And so that can be just loving awareness and compassion with ease. That's my intention, to help guide and facilitate from that intention.
The trauma thing seems to be a huge
Huh.
moving factor for you.
We
Like you
all
really want to
have
help
it.
people with that.
Yeah. We all have trauma. All of us have experiences or have witnessed something that has greatly impacted our lives. Um and that was a catalyst for me, and seeing how I wouldn't be where I'm at today unless I had my teachers or people to reflect with, or my own like um kind of enlightenment on fear and working through what I would say, like, the violence of life and this belief of violence, that life is violent. Because, like, coming out of the womb and we're born, like, we used to come out of the womb with forceps and then we're shot up with all these drugs and vaccines and we're cut from our mothers, or men are still cut to this day the moment that they're coming out of the womb. I mean, it's a shock. So birth trauma alone is a huge one that affects us even to this day subconsciously, but our actions show it. Um, and yeah, trauma is definitely a catalyst. It's an invitation to further deepen intimacy with oneself, or creating a deeper relationship to this body and who we really are. Like, we're walking around out here every moment of our lives in this body. Like, we might as well create a relationship to it. And the body really knows more than our mind does. Um, yeah.
Do you think that violence is innately human, that it's part of us, or do you think that's one of those structures that we've embraced somewhere along the way?
Mhm. I feel that violence can be completely innocent because some people may not actually realize the consequences of, let's say, their actions. And that's usually like stemming from early childhood trauma on its own. And yeah, I'd like to say that violence isn't a very like human-like quality, but here we are being at war with ourselves within communities. We're angry or pissed at our neighbors, or like we're struggling in our own interpersonal relationships and like girlfriends or boyfriends, and like there's this violence and drama that comes up because like there's this deep separation from like, man, what's true, what's really true, and like we're at war with other countries and fucking politics and shit, man. Like, that's so much more important to focus on than our own interpersonal relationships right now. Because it's all a reflection. It just gets magnetized where we put our attention. Um, yeah,
Attention is everything. What you focus on is where you're gonna go.
totally. Yeah. Arnold Schwarzenegger, he was a person who would meditate on parts of his body than to actually like work out. He would just meditate and bring visualizations and attentions to his body. And those muscles would actually respond in a way as though he was actually working out. So this material world and matter is completely malleable. And I want to say malleable rather than manipulation, because manipulation always is coming from a place of wanting to change something other than what it is. And malleable is like, wow, you're really a sculptor in this life and an artist, and you create the life you see or like perceive, or everything's usually created from that state. Um, yeah. It's pretty insane just saying that alone. Wow. So yeah, where your attention goes, the energy literally flows. That's not my saying. I forgot who stated that.
Well,
I
you can
love that.
trademark that.
Please.
Yeah. Okay, well, Clarice, this was awesome. Unfortunately, I have to get out of here, but
Yes,
I
please.
really enjoyed having you on. We'll have to
Thank
do
you
this
so
again.
much. Thank you so much. Thank you for hosting such a fantastic space and getting people's voices out there and being down to do this. Thanks for doing this, Nick.
Yeah.
It's amazing.
Well, I'm excited to see what you do with your podcast.
Thank
I think
you.
it needs to happen. I think you would be good at it. I think you have a lot to say.
Yeah, thank you so much.
Yeah.
Yeah, check out my website is the Innate Now. I'll be hosting a workshop soon on Qigong energy arts that stem from China. They're like super ancient. If you'd love to join, I would love to like hook you up with this. It's really beneficial. And yeah, I'm super grateful to be on here. Thank you.
Do you have anything else you want to plug? Sometimes people will plug social media and where people can find you.
Yeah, my Instagram is mystic.mayo.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Well, Clarice, this was awesome. Thank you. Really.
Thank you, Nick.